morning and welcome back to the lecture series on performative gender and religions in South Asia. Today we are going to start with a new module on the religions of the tribal. As we all know, the tribal population in India is quite significant, and there are a number of tribal groups present in India. So, tribal religion or rather tribal religions have their roots largely in the oral traditions, and these religions are present in the form of stories that pass down, they could be stories about origin, stories about ancestry, stories about different villages, different clans and sub-clans, and these stories pass down the generations through the word of mouth from the elders to the progeny. So, Roshan John Joseph writes, and I quote, "Every tribal religious system consists of three essential elements. Firstly, they believe in the existence of a superhuman world, which refers to the belief system of tribals. Secondly, they form a human relationship to the superhuman world, which refers to their value system. Thirdly, for establishing a relationship, they practice various rites and rituals which refer to their action systems." Unquote. So, the rituals are shared among each other through oral means, right? Many rituals are exchanged among the different systems of religions, and it is very difficult to trace their roots. And like I was saying, if we go to the different villages, different abutting villages belonging to the same tribe, we would see that these stories, the mini stories, the local stories change. Some villages worship or emphasize more or place a higher degree of respect for a certain deity, and another village would have its main deity as someone else. So, we see that the stories, the mini stories, the localized stories change from village to village. Even the abutting villages have their own local myths, right? So, some village, for example, would have at the heart of their worship, or at the heart of their spiritual understanding, spiritual existence, Jaherera, which is one of the primary deities for the Santhal. Another village could worship the Morekuturuiko as higher than Jaherera. So, for all these villages, some origin stories, some specific myths and folklores run down the generations. Now, tribal religion does not signify any monolithic system of rituals. The Indian population, like I was saying, constitutes of several tribes, and their systems do not necessarily overlap with each other completely. So, even within the same tribe, there are certain nuances, certain changes in the same myth and the same storytelling. The understanding of tribal religions through a single or monolithic frame is therefore challenging, because it has a wide range of belief systems and rituals depending on the tribe itself. The tribal communities worshipping could range from superhumans, the superhumans that are called the bongas by the Santhals, and can also be extended to the inanimate natural objects, including the trees, the water bodies, the hills and others. So, scholar Tamo Mibang says, I quote, "Most of such tribes have their own notion of religion, which are shaped not only through the observance of various festivals, institution of priestship, worship of large number of gods and goddesses, deities, beliefs in spiritual worlds, but also remain embedded deeply within various myths and other forms of oral tradition. Unquote. The three main components of the Santhal worldview are human, nature, and God. And the Santhal worldview embraces the idea of an integrative and interactive relationship between the community, nature, and supernatural forces. So, this is to say, I'm going to talk, more about the Santhal, but as an extension of this discussion, we could see that some of the traits that I discuss about the Santhals could be applied to other tribes as well. The Santhals' identity, just like in many other tribes, primarily emerges or grows out of the totality of an interdependence among, uh, you know, relationship with other humans, relationship with the nature, and finally relationship with the God, such that there is no such sense of individuality. Meaning of one's existence is wholly manifested only in conjunction with other aspects of the world one lives in. So, one is not an entity, one does not derive meaning only as an individual existence. The meaning of oneself is complete or completed only in conjunction with the surroundings, which include other humans, other, the inanimate aspects of nature, as well as the spiritual beings, the superhuman bodies and beings. So that tribals are chiefly a congregational rather than an individual entity, and they make religious offerings, sacrifices, and libations at the level of a given social unit. So, whenever there is a worship among the tribals, it happens at the level of a unit. It's not an individual worshipper, worshipping the god or a spirit. It is rather a village, a sub clan, or even a family. So, it is a very congregational, a very communal identity. Although a significant population of tribals, such as the Santhals, have now migrated to the urban, the urban areas, the different parts of the country. They have moved as nuclear units of households and settled in urban areas. So, although the Santhals have migrated to different parts of the country, and now they have settled as nuclear families, nuclear units of households in the urban areas, their ancestors basically originate from villages, and villages form the basic communal unit, such that we can see that the tribal culture or the tribal groups have never settled alone or in uncultivated lands. So, at the heart of the indigenous notion of spirit, there is a pantheistic view which suggests that the supernatural and the ephemeral world influence each other and they cannot be really separated. So, scholar Dermot O'Morchu studies the indigenous spirit as, to quote O'Morchu, a spirit that is contained in this world, in the realm of everyday events, yet transcends the material and personal creation, unquote. So, the indigenous religions perceive the humans as a strand, just a part, and not at the heart of the entire ecological web. So, the indigenous or tribal religions see, everyone present in the nature, even the humans as child of nature, contributing to the knowledge of what the Great Spirit is. In the understanding of the Great Spirit or God, the animate, the inanimate, the humans, the animals, the plants, the flora and the fauna contribute alike. So, the thankfulness, the gratitude of the humans towards the birds and the trees result in the indigenous worldview emerging as a biocentric, harmonious loop. You know, it's more like a circle rather than a homocentric or an androcentric power driven ladder or hierarchy where human is at the top of all the other beings. So, physical differences among various aspects of the nature are balanced by the spiritual sameness. So, the outwardly differences, humans are different from trees and from animals, but you know, this outwardly difference is balanced by spiritual sameness and the existential necessity to share and become a part of the other. That's what entails, that's what our existence entails, to share and you know, such that we are extension of one another. We are all part of a common loop of existence, of being. And that's where the pantheistic view of tribal religions is coming from. So, we see the anthropomorphic traits of these spirits of the Santhals. Like I said, I am going to talk about the tribal religions, but at the, you know, center of my discussion today, I will mainly have the Santhal tribe in my mind. So, rather than focusing on the hierarchical relationship where there is just one high or supreme god, the tribals generally practice camaraderie or you know, bond with anthropomorphic spirits that intercept their everyday mundane activities. So, for instance, although the Santhal considers Ponomoser or Dharam as the supreme spirit and the sun as a symbol of Ponomoser, Santhals also believe in appeasing the you know, the localized, the smaller spirits, the village spirits, and these spirits are called bongas. I have already said that. They also propitiate the ancestral and domestic spirits who keep a watch over the villages, and they are responsible, these ancestor spirits and the domestic spirits are responsible for the betterment of the village, for the upkeeping of communal health and overall happiness. So, the Santhal myth talks about you know, a clash that happens between the high god Ponomoser or you know, Dharam and the Bongas or the lesser spirits. So, Dharam also is known as Thakurjiu or Thakur. So, that is the idea of the supreme god, a more comparatively more distant god, and the Bongas. So, there are myths about a clash between the supreme god and the lesser gods until the smaller spirits, the local spirits are defeated and sent to settle on earth. And these local spirits or Bongas became the messengers of Thakurjiu. So, we see these anthropomorphic you know, traits of the spirits depicted through the storytelling and the myths of the tribals. God is therefore not an absolute and distant object of worship for the tribals, but is believed to accompany him or her in everyday activities. So, God accompanies a Santhal or an Orao to their hunt, to their agricultural fields. The Santhal in fact, as a human, as an ephemeral mortal human, uses his or her agency to nominate only certain species and render them the status of deities, right. So, only among the inanimate objects, the humans choose which species can be endowed with the quality of quality of the spirit, right? Which species can be nominated as the spirit. So Santhali folklores subscribe to the idea of the heaven and the earth as two platforms which exchange and interact with one another. So heaven is not really far away. The humans and the gods are on exchangeable platform. The Santhal myths have it that the Thakurju and Thakurani, the great spirit and his consort, had once decided to come and stay on earth, and they engaged Jaherburi or Jaherera, Litabonga and Dhorum to arrange for sustainable resources on earth. The crisis of water on earth was discussed among the gods, and Thakurju would deploy his entire consignment of spirits to resolve this crisis and fill the earth with water. That is, coming from one of the creation stories, how the earth was created, how different species started coming and living on earth. So the Santhal's sacred book, Jamsin Binti, uses short oral stories to describe the heaven and the earth, the creation of life by Thakurju, the lores of Hadia or rice spear, the stories on cotton harvesting and creation of clothes, among others. So we see through these, mythical stories, we see how human civilization also metamorphoses, how humans evolve. So they are discovering, sources of water. They are discovering, how to light fire. They are learning how to weave clothes. So it's also regarding the evolution of humans that these myths are talking about. These stories reflect how the three limbs of the tribal religions, in this case we are talking mainly about the Santhal people from the eastern part of India, the three limbs being the philosophical, the ritualistic and the organizational or social aspects. So these three aspects are deeply interwoven and interspersed with one another: the philosophical, the ritualistic and the organizational. So we see the origin story saying that Thakurji consulted the lower spirits in creating the different creatures on earth, which suggests that the Santhal's god and spirits function through a sense of accountability towards humans, the human world and the the supernatural world or the godly world cannot be really dissociated from one another. Santali gods and poems suggest that in fact it is a blemish on the god's reputation if the god or the Thakur cannot reciprocate to human prayers and take care of the mundane needs, the everyday needs. So humans make demands, and God, as a way of protecting his own godliness, has to fulfill these needs, take care of these demands. And God has to constantly engage with the state of mundaneness, with the ordinary life. God is not over and beyond the mundane state of existence, right? So that's where we are getting the concept of anthropomorphic spirit from. Now, the Santhal believes that the primordial knowledge came to man from birds and animals. So this is where we are getting the human-animal relationship. I was already talking about how the Santhal considers, himself or herself as only a strand in the whole and a part of the biocentric loop. The world is not imagined in the Santhal cosmos or the tribal cosmos at large. So in the tribal cosmos, the worldly existence is perceived in terms of a biocentric loop and not a homocentric hierarchical ladder. And humans are connected with animals, right? They have a kinship, familial, tie with other animals. That's how the Santhal envisions or understands the natural world and humans' existence in it. So, a biocentric view of the world shapes the values and the basic habits of the Santhal. A common thread connecting humanity with animality is realized from the different origin stories that are available. One of the common stories being that the first man and woman, Pilchu Haram and Pilchu Buri, were brought to being. They were created. The first man and the first woman, Pilchu Haram and Pilchu Buri, were created by a pair of heavenly birds, the Has and the Hasil, and these Has and the Hasil were created out of God's hair. And the fact that the human harmonizes between opposing elements is understood from the fact that their ancestors, these birds Has and Hasil, were mediators of opposing elements, the heaven and the earth. So, Has and Hasil is believed to have flown, they flew below the sun and above the earth, making a contact with both the worlds. So, human has both the potentials, the godly potentials and the animal-like traits in them. This is something we have also discussed while talking about Islam and Sufism. So many of the religions see humans as a liaison between two different worlds, two different planes, and having the traits of the angelic, the traits of the the demonic or the devil, and then the traits of the animals in them. So humans are like a connection or a bridge, and and the human has very many possibilities within his or her body. So, the idea of a close-knit bond between the human and the animal worlds is also reinforced through Santhali folk tales that refer to human mothers giving birth to animals and also animals conceiving human child. So, this kind of human animal relationship is very common, where animals are in fact seen as ancestors. And coming to that, the concept of totemism. So, the Santhali myth claims that the mortal world came into being through the earthworm consuming the earth and excreting it on the back of a tortoise for 7 days and nights, and then finally the earth comes above the all-pervasive water. First there was only water, and then the earthworm and the tortoise together brings the earth above the water. This is how the creation myth or the myth of about the origin of creation goes. So, this is very different from the biblical myth about provenance, about origin of creation, where human is at the center of all creations, and God ordains or God kind of permits humans to have or enjoy a utilitarian relationship with the rest of the nature. Human is above all other creatures. Here it is not like that. All the creatures have their own value in the nature, in the natural, in the ecological cycle and the ecological chain of beings. So, totemism also points to the Santhal's sense of connection with the animal world, right? What is a totem? We have to understand, among Santhals, the concept of individual body substance cannot be uncoupled from one's membership to a clan and association with a totem. So, there is no such thing as an individual body substance. It is the body substance shared by a clan, and each clan is marked by its association with a certain totem. So every Santhal clan is believed to have descended from a, either a totemic animal, sometimes it could be a totemic bird, or even a plant. So usually it's a totemic animal or bird, and this creature is supposed to be related to the birth and deeds of the ancestors of that particular clan, right? So it is almost like the totem occupies the position of a demigod for that particular clan to which it belongs. So this totemism entails that as a way of showing respect, the totemic animal should be considered as a clan member. So that defines this human animal relationship. Human as not only the human existence derives its essence from a transhuman bonding or a transhuman linkage with the other natural beings. So totemic animal being considered as a clan member, and it is never hunted or consumed by that particular clan, right? It needs to be shown respect. It's like a demigod, like you already said. In fact, killing or eating a totem is considered as a taboo. It is equivalent to patricide or fratricide. It is like killing a member of one's own clan, and just like killing one's own father or one's own brother, one's own kin. And even Santhals would believe that seeing a dead totem entails observing death rituals. So when one witnesses a totem that has died, one has to observe death rituals. Now, Santhal society, has certain, so we see that Santhal society prescribes a certain relationship among different clans, just as intra-clan marriage suggests pollution, pollution caused by incest. Marriage between or marriage within a clan is completely prohibited. Marriage between clans that share antagonistic totemic relations is also forbidden. So, for instance, the Kingfisher clan or Kisku and the Weed clan, Marandi, right? Kisku and Marandi would never marry among themselves, right? So, because the Kingfisher eats the weed, so it's a consumer-consumed relationship. It will never fructify into something positive. It is believed that any marital or conjugal relationship between the Marandi and the Kishku would result in something negative, right? So, within the clan, one cannot get married for fear of incest. Marriage between certain clans that share antagonistic totemic symbols, the symbols of, hunter hunted or consumer consumed, also cannot get married according to the Santhal totemic system, belief system. So, by virtue of celebrating distinctiveness and specificity in terms of stories, totemic worship, clothing habits, food and deities, the clans consciously avoid any kind of endogamous alliance. Endogamous alliance would destroy their uniqueness. In the clans surviving with their own unique stories, it's also a way of keeping certain traditions alive. When the totemic individuality or totemic specificities are threatened, the Santhal's identity is also believed to be thereby threatened. So, with this, I am going to stop my lecture here today, and let's continue with the discussion in our next lecture. Thank you.